This video response is for the first assignment, the purpose and promise of special education. I'm also going to include a separate doc with written answers just because it has all of my citations that I correct and I want to make sure that's in there too. For question number 1, who are exceptional children? Exceptional children are children who may have learning or behavioral problems, children with physical disabilities or sensory impairments, and also children with superior intellectual abilities and special talents. Such children require an individualized program of instruction and even special education so they can receive the full benefits of their education. All of this information was found on page 6 of the text. For question number 2, how many exceptional children are there? Heward, Albert, Morgan, and Conrad state on page 7 there are around 7.3 million children or youth who received special education during the 2019 and 2020 school year. Also, the forms and categories of disabilities are accounted for, lots of different ones such as autism, visual impairment, emotional disturbance, specific learning disabilities such as dyslexia and dyscalculia, and developmental delay. Another stat that I found on page 7 is that there are nearly 3 to 5 million academically gifted students in the U.S. From K through 12. Question number 3, why do we label and classify exceptional children? The IDEA Act, or the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, indicates that in order to receive special education and other services, a child must first be identified with a disability or impairment. Heward, Albert, Morgan, and Conrad argue that because there's discourse surrounding negative aspects of labeling and positive aspects of labeling, they lean more towards the positive aspects, and that they state labeling is needed in order to provide special education services, as well as communications between all parties, whether that's children, educators and the parents, administrators, and more, surrounding the child's individual needs and educational needs. All of this information was found on page 8. Question number 4 is, why are there laws governing the education of exceptional children necessary? The United States does not have a great history in terms of special education and the treatment and inclusion of exceptional children in the classroom. The laws governing the education of exceptional children are really necessary because they ensure that all children are granted an equal and equitable opportunity to receive an education, as well as FAPE, which is the right to a free, appropriate public education. This information was found on page 11. An important form of legislation that I found that I want to include is the PARC versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which was in 1972. This ensured that children with intellectual disabilities had the right to a free and appropriate education, and it also emphasized that placements in general classrooms are way more beneficial than segregated settings, which is the norm before this. This was on page 12. Again, these laws ensure that all children are accounted for in the education system and that their educational and social needs can be met in the school. IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act for question 5, which is what is IDEA, is a form of legislation that dictates, and I'm going to use a direct quote from the text, roles and responsibilities of general and special educators, school administrators, parents, and students with disabilities. This was found from page 12. Heward, Albert, Morgan, and Conrad also state that there are a lot of purposes of IDEA, and I'll list them all out. Ensuring that children with disabilities have free, appropriate education that emphasizes special education while also preparing them for the future, ensures that the rights of children with disabilities and parents are protected, and it also assists states, localities, educational service agencies, and federal agencies to provide for the education of children with disabilities, assists states in implementing statewide early intervention services, ensuring that educators and parents have tools to improve educational results for children with disabilities, while also ensuring the effectiveness of efforts to educate children with disabilities. Question 6 is, what is special education? And when I was reading this, I noticed that special education can be seen as solely from a legislative standpoint, where it is a governed entity where legislation ensures IDEA-compliant IEPs. But also, it can be seen from a socio-political perspective, where special education can be seen as the extension of the civil rights movement and the acceptance of people with disabilities in society. Both of these I found on page 23. Heward, Albert Morgan, and Conrad they note that both of these are valid perspectives, but they kind of go further and state that the fundamental purpose of special education is instructionally based intervention, which is designed to diminish or decrease the obstacles that may keep a child who has a disability from the full promise of the education, as well as participation in school and society. This was found on page 23. Special education also can include an interdisciplinary team of professionals who work with parents and families in order to help exceptional children learn. Incorporating IEPs and functional curriculum for individualized instruction based on student-specific needs again, while also incorporating the use of specialized and adapted materials or methods. So, as for question 7, what are current and future challenges in special education? I'd like to note that although a lot of progress has been made in recent decades with special education and equability for kids with disabilities in schools, there are some current and future challenges that still remain. I covered a couple of the challenges, such as implementing more effective teaching practices in order for exceptional children to achieve the greatest amount of success and independence possible to transfer to their adulthood after school, closing the research gap that has led to poor research and practices for special education or ineffective research and practices for special education. Also, to increase the availability of special education programs for gifted and talented students, as these are often not focused on as much. I also stated that these were found on page 28 and 29. I also stated that increasing funding for special education programs is a current issue and will likely always be a future issue until it's solved. That the United States education system faces. Many schools don't have the financial means or resources to provide special education services that are even required by law. This only harms exceptional children's ability to obtain an equitable and beneficial education for themselves and their future. This was found on page 30, and in the document I have all of the APA citations as well.